Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Sally Eves, Chair of Global Cyber Trust at CF Cyber and CEO of Aspirational Futures. And a huge warm welcome to this Juniper Network's AI Skeptics event. Is AI going to take my job? We're here to bust some of the myths and misinformation around AI, particularly focusing on implementations within AI and networking. To do so, I'm in great company. So first of all, I'm going to ask our stellar panel to just give a brief intro into their role. Daryl, can I start with you first?
Yeah, hi Sally, great to be here. My name's Daryl. I work for Aston Martin as the lead network architect and the team leader. I'm in charge of all the wired and wireless connectivity, right the way from your desk all the way up to the main site. So yeah, that's me.
Brilliant stuff, thank you. And maybe Seamus, over to you next.
Hi, my name is Seamus McGillicuddy. I'm the Vice President of Research at Enterprise Management Associates, an analyst firm based in the United States. And I do a lot of market research and consulting on network infrastructure and operations teams, how they design, build, and operate their networks.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today. And next, over to you, Tom.
My name is Tom Hollingsworth, and I am an independent analyst in the networking community. I work with a lot of other independent analysts through an event series called Tech Field Day, but I do a lot of research into emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence. You can see some of my thoughts on that subject at my blog at networkingnerd.net.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. I've attended one of those days as well. Really, really enjoyable. So thank you for that. So perhaps we can get straight in now to some of our key questions, and maybe let's start first with the fundamentals. So looking at what AI is, what jobs it can do within IT and networking, and changing the work that we do, and how has it changed you and your roles in your organizations so far? Now for me, I'll come at this quickly from two hats. So one is a CTO by practice, but also as a change manager as well. So particularly in telecoms, I've seen this in kind of three main pillars. So optimizing user experiences, simplifying operations, and also this move from reactive to more active intelligence and end-to-end insights, if you will. So I'd love to kind of go around the table and kind of explain those kind of key fundamentals to the audience today. Perhaps Daryl, could I go to you first?
Yeah, sure. So AI for us, we're still quite new into evaluating AI, and we're starting to deploy that into our infrastructure. AI for us is not about kind of replacing anyone. It's about, and this is a great quote I heard the other day in a training course, AI is not about replacing humans with robots. It's about taking the robot out of the human. And it leaves you to get on with things like strategy and high level things that the business can value. I use the analogy of a car. Then we have car sat navs. Sat navs never replaced the driver. It just gave you a tool to be a better, more alert driver. So I think that's how we should view AI at the moment. So yeah.
I love it. It's that complementary partnership coming to the fore and what you were discussing there. I love that. I love it. A good analogy. That's great, Daryl. Thank you. And Tom, could I ask for your perspective?
Well, I actually want to jump on Daryl's analogy there, because one of the things that I think that AI has been very critical in doing is helping us understand how to modify systems and how to kind of roll with the punches, if you will. Part of what we have spent so many years doing in the networking space is kind of dealing with the little fires that pop up. And if you think of it kind of using Daryl's analogy as a sat nav, I remember the days when sat nav was effectively going online and downloading a list of directions from a website like MapQuest. And Lord help you if you took the wrong turn at step 4, because from that point forward, you were completely lost. But a sat nav not only gives you the overview of what you're trying to accomplish, but it can course correct in the middle of your journey. So if, for example, there is a car accident that you must route around, or in modern sat nav with capabilities to include more intelligence, if there is a congested route that has become congested since the start of your journey, it can automatically reroute you based on certain factors like least amount of time traveled, or whether or not you're going to have to pay a toll on the road. So it gives you this capability to be smarter about what you're doing instead of just relying on the same old tried and true directions that we've been following for a number of years.
I love that. That's a great example. And also what I love there is the ability to personalize to what matters to you, whether that's that cost of the toll or the shorter journey or environmental impact even as well. So great example. And Seamus, did you have any final thoughts on that yourself?
Yeah, sure. One thing, from my perspective, one thing I see is a lot of network operations tools and network monitoring, network performance management tools. they excel at presenting data to admins, engineers. They don't always do a very good job of providing insights. They point you to indicators of a problem, don't really tell you what the problem might be all the time. AI technologies are sort of providing those first intelligent insights into the data that those tools typically provide.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. So let's go back to the heart of our kind of question. Our title for our event today is AI going to take my job? Let's drill into that for the audience, because again, it's something that's grabbed a lot of headlines over recent years, although I think the narrative is changing. Certainly for me, it's not about this replacement, it's that complementary strengths I mentioned at top, and also robots kind of taking things out of humans, for example, and making more time for meaningful activity. So Seamus, if I could go back to you and some of your research in this area.
Yes, I did some market research on network operations team interest in AI last summer. We surveyed a few hundred people who are actively engaged in using this technology. There wasn't a lot of concern about losing your job. There was a lot of there was a sense that this can deliver a lot of value to make things run better. Like one of the early use cases we were seeing with a lot of traction was just the idea of more intelligent alerting and escalations of events, so that the alerts connect the dots. There's a lot of contextualization of data in those alerts, more so than you may have seen in the past, and also the system gets smarter about routing it to the right person that has the expertise to take action on those alerts. Although when the alerts get smarter and more contextualized, people with less sophisticated engineering skills can actually take action more often. So it empowers people with lower skills a lot of the time that typically would have just escalated something to a tier 3 engineer rather than trying to deal with it themselves. So that's one big thing that we saw in our research.
Fantastic, really interesting. I love that one around that democratization of the ability to take agency and to take action to more and more roles. That's really, really interesting. Thank you. And Daryl, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so I can take that a step further and go on from what Seamus was saying there in some real world examples there. We've been deploying and testing the AI platform at the moment, and it's starting to identify things that we might not have known about. And one particular one is bad cable, a bad network cable. Now, historically, you wouldn't have necessarily known that straight away. It might manifest itself in a site is poor performance or something, but in order to identify that, you need to trawl through an awful lot of logs and look at errors on interfaces and things like this. So AI can pull all that log files and alerting all into one place and say, hey, you know what, I think this is a bad cable on this particular interface here. You might want to look at this. And so it goes back to that, is it going to replace me? And the answer to that is absolutely no. You find yourself between two extremes at the moment, and this is where I see things going. On the one extreme, you've got, oh, we're getting an alert for bad cable. We'll ignore it because people turn off their PCs all the time. On the other extreme, we'll get, oh, it's a bad cable, I'm going to go and replace it because the AI told me to. That cable might be the uplink for the site. And so it's kind of like an extra pair of hands just guiding you in that direction to say, hey, you know what, you might want to go and have a look at this. And that saves you an awful lot of troubleshooting because it's already correlated that data. So at the moment, we're seeing ourselves in that balance, and it's definitely going the right way. So it's really promising at the moment.
I love that. Almost takes us back to that analogy of the sat nav earlier, doesn't it? You've got a myriad of paths and it's filtering out that noise into what's the optimum direction and path to take. So I really like that. Excellent. And Tom, what are you seeing there, particularly around that kind of single source of truth aspect? I think it's really interesting.
Well, it's interesting that a lot of people have looked at this ideal of having a single source of truth for your network. But if you asked most engineers or operations teams today, what is the state of your network? They would go to some kind of a design document and say, oh, well, this is what it looks like. And my first question when someone does that is, okay, now what does the network actually look like? And that usually throws them for a loop because, well, no, it's supposed to be like this. And I'm like, Von Moltke said that no plan survives contact with the enemy. Well, no network configuration survives implementation. And so even if there's a little bit of a disconnect between what you intended to put out and what was actually configured, those two disconnects create two sources of truth: desired state and actual state. And nobody wants to do the investigation work to find out what actual state is. There's a quote that can be attributed to Kurt Vonnegut that's a flaw in human nature, that everybody wants to build, but nobody wants to do maintenance. And that's effectively what this is going out to figure out what's going on. So what you can use an AI platform to do is to find out what current state is, implementation, and compare it to desired state, and to try to find out where the disconnect happened in those two. Was it unintentional? I copied a configuration to a switch, or I had some kind of a staging server that had an error in the middle of deployment, and now suddenly the switch thinks it's the spanning tree route for the whole network. Or was it intentional, where you have someone who has a lot more skill than they think they do, and says, oh, well, I know that every time I try to put this on that particular model of switch, it fails, so I'm going to modify this command just a little bit so that what actually goes onto the switch works. Even if the intention was pure, what you've created is a disconnect in state where a command later on, or some kind of a desired deployment, could fail because of something you had no clue about what happened, because of the disconnect between those two. And part of the reason why humans don't like this is because maintenance is boring. It's mind-numbing. And an AI doesn't sleep. It doesn't get tired. It will not stop until it does exactly what it's been told to do. And what it returns is the truth as it sees it. It is not trying to save its job. It is not trying to get a promotion. It's not trying to make somebody else look good. It is telling you what it found. So you can trust it. You may not inherently believe it, but you can trust that the answers that it's returned are accurate.
I love that. It's a really, really good example there. And Seamus, can I bring you back in as well? Because I know we spoke previously, you were drilling in a bit more about how it helps find out the how, how things are broken, for example, not just how to fix it. I think that's a really interesting take as well.
I remember having a conversation with a network operations manager a couple of years ago, who he told me he might have 7,000 interfaces down on his network, and he only cares about the ones that matter. If there's applications that are trying to run over those interfaces, he wants to fix them. But it points to the fact that a lot of tools that network operations teams use do not provide actionable insights. Typical enterprise tells, in our research, typical NetOps team, less than half of alerts being pumped out by their tools are actionable, like indicators of actual problems. And so there's a lot of noise that needs to be sorted through first before you even try to fix something, to figure out if it's actually broken, if there's actually something broken that needs to be fixed. And then, yeah, once you figure out something's broken, you need to know how it broke, not just how to fix it, because you don't want it to break again. So, you have to be thinking about proactive problem prevention and optimization as you're troubleshooting. AI can sort of help you do that, because AI kind of connects the dots. Looking at how the network is serving the business, and how to optimize that. It will open up the opportunity for more problem solving that improves the network's ability to serve the business, not just fighting fires, but preventing those fires from ever happening. Over the last 10 years, our research has shown that between 30 and 40% of all IT service degradations are detected by end users before IT operations is aware of them. That means they're reporting them to the help desk, and they're not being productive because of those problems to some extent before NetOps is even responding. You need to turn that around. You need to get that as close to zero as possible. And I think AI can help you get there to some extent.
Absolutely. I think there's a key point there. I think two pillars of what you were saying really struck me. That move to be more proactive, as you were just talking about there, that active intelligence I said at the top, but also the ability to filter out the noise. And one thing I read, some research I've been involved in, it was looking at, for example, burnout in a lot of operations team, and that was one of the biggest contributors to that, and also to churn as well. So again, making a huge difference in that respect as well. So really interesting points all around there. Fantastic. And perhaps we can now drill into that impact point. So around your organizations, what have you seen AI delivering in particular? How have you been able to demonstrate that value across the organization? And what other implications has this brought about, particularly around skills and education, which implicit bias acknowledge that's a real, strong point area for me. I really love looking at that area too. So perhaps we can bring all those points together, look at the impact and the implications, and perhaps Seamus, if I could go back to you first.
Well, as you're bringing AI into your organization, one thing that you're going to see is many people in your IT ops organization are not confident in their ability to evaluate AI. They have multiple vendors telling them that they've developed AI technology, machine learning technology that can transform operations. They don't know how to determine whether what they're being sold is just a bill of goods or not. They also want to know that there's a variety of network data that's being used to train those algorithms. Like, is the training that this vendor does with its algorithms going to be representative of what I see in my network? Like, are they training this in a realistic way so it's actually going to understand networking? So that's something that we've seen early on. Those are the types of things that they want to see. I've also heard people say, I want to just get past like people specifically told me, like architects at Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies, who say there's a lot of marketing speak, a lot of buzzwords going around. They just want to know how you're solving problems. Like, how are you solving the problems that I have? Can you show me examples of that so that I know like what this can do? That's something that they want to be able to take back to their organization, be like, hey, look what I saw. This is I think this is something that we could use to really change the way we manage our network here.
Absolutely, those tangibles, those examples, so important. Make it relatable to that particular sector. And that clarification, you're spot on around language. I think zero trust would be a classic example of that. I was doing something on that earlier on today, and again, that's somewhere where there's quite a lot of confusion. So getting that right and making sure there's not misinformation, absolutely critical as well. So I love that tangible focus. Tom, what are you seeing in your area?
So a lot of the unease about deploying AI within an organization comes from two different areas. The first is that it's going to take my job away. And we've kind of talked a little bit about that throughout this whole thing. But more importantly, there are a lot of people that don't feel comfortable with the idea that an AI is going to be able to determine what the source of your problem is instantaneously and give you a recommended fix. It kind of eliminates that kind of feeling that we get when we figure out a really hard problem, like working a Sudoku or trying to figure out a puzzle, and we get that rush of endorphins when, hey, this is the secret and I figured something out. To combat that second problem, you kind of have to get into a mode where you're communicating more effectively, and you're using AI as a tool to do that. How many times has your average engineer or ops person kind of been under the crunch because there's a huge problem that we need to fix, and the executives are frustrated and something needs to happen, and you're sitting here literally racking your brain trying to find out what the source of the problem can be, eliminating choices one at a time? To them, you look like an AI because you are doing the same kind of learning and analysis that an AI would do to spit out an answer. They trust you because you're a living, breathing person. We should trust AI in the same way. We should still communicate. We should still tell people what happened. And more importantly, even if AI is the solution that solved that problem, we do need to tell people that AI came up with that. In my old job as a managed service provider, we used to have a saying on the wall: if you didn't tell your customers that you fixed something, did you actually fix anything? Well, in a way, users need the same kind of reassurance inside of your organization. But the other thing that is very important is that people need to look at AI not as a way for them to have their jobs taken away, but it will remove tasks from your jobs. Kind of like Daryl said, we're taking the robot out of the person. Think about all the things that you do on an average day that are just repetitive and boring and mind-numbing, but necessary. Having that taken off of your plate, having that given to something that will not stop, will always accomplish the results and send you in a report telling you what it did, frees you up to think about other things, to spend more time building and imagining and creating instead of doing maintenance. And I think that framing helps people understand you're not going to lose your job. In fact, you're probably going to get a promotion to something more exciting and new, and that's a good thing overall.
Absolutely, it's that changing of the narrative, isn't it? And the word enablement is kind of ringing through my ears when we were describing these different aspects around this today. So couldn't agree more strongly, Tom. Absolutely. Daryl, did you have any final thoughts on this around that value, also the skills implications of this piece too?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're starting off quite small with AI at the moment. We are a small team, and so we can't bring in something in big bang because there's only three of us now. So we're starting off very small. Where we see a little bit of not so much resistance, but our operations teams, our service desk, network operations, and so on, they don't dislike AI. They think everyone kind of accepts, okay, this is a great tool. Where we do find maybe a little bit of pushback is with management, and they say, oh, hang on a minute, is this just another one of the toys that IT is buying? So we kind of say, well, actually no, look what we can do. Before I had to count how many MAC addresses were on the network or how many IP addresses were in use. Now I can just ask a high level language question, like how many users are on this site, and it gives me an answer. And so management are sort of seeing this, and I'm demoing this very informally. It's almost like oh, hey, while you're here, just have a look at this. It's just kind of just as somebody passes by, and we're seeing a lot of value from that. So just having that very small focused not so much trial, but small focused deployment and growing from there is hugely beneficial. Yeah.
I really like that. I like the fact you're bringing to the fore as well. This can be an incremental change as well. So I love that. I think that's really important for a lot of businesses. So that's a great point. Thank you for sharing that. And with my telco hat on as well, certainly things I've seen up close and personal is around, faster problem solution, resolution, fewer on-site visits, for example, as well. So you've got that big operator benefit. And equally from the consumer, you've got a better reliability, measurability, huge point as well, and predictability too. So again, that kind of shared value proposition through AI. So perhaps as we start to bring all these different elements to a close, we can do a bit of a round table again and kind of just bring each of you like a closing thought, a takeaway to share with the audience. Could be something that's come out from this conversation or kind of a top tip that might be relevant for them wherever they are in their journey towards implementing AI at the moment. Seamus, got to go for you first.
One thing is most network operations teams have too many tools. They're using 10, 15, 20 tools to monitor and troubleshoot their infrastructure. AI can consolidate that, I think, quite a bit. They can make some tools less relevant. They may not go away, but the insight you're getting out of AI will lead to your people spending less time going from tool to tool to tool to get the answers they need, because the answers are in the AI solution, depending on where it lives. I've heard from people saying, I'd love a AI solution just pulls all the data from all my tools and presents it as a single view with insight. I think, and once you see that, you see the value. I also find, people spend a lot of time just generating reports. Like, hey, we got to audit this. We need to know what is everything in compliance. Their golden configs. It's like I talked to people recently who devote 10, 15, 20 hours a week generating reports. I think an intelligent solution can optimize that. So if you feel when you're doing stuff like that, like swiveling from tool to tool to tool or generating reports over and over again, you're not really delivering a lot of value to the business. Like, you're spending most of your time just doing repetitive tasks, as everyone's been talking about here. You're not demonstrating your value. And when I'm trying to understand the return on investment in a tool like an AI solution, it's about freeing up labor and allowing that labor to do something that's more important to the business. And that's what I think people should be thinking about as they're looking at AI, is like, how do I take my people who are really knowledgeable and skilled and empower them to support transformation of our business, not keeping the lights on, but spreading the light elsewhere.
I really like that, freeing up that capacity for higher order work. Again, it's that changing of the narrative, isn't it? So important. Thank you so much. And Tom, over to you for your closing thoughts.
I really like a lot of the things that Seamus said, and I think that one of the reasons why we kind of have this tool aversion is because the tool is the solution to whatever problem we have. So every time we come into a new issue that we need to solve, we just go buy something and make the problem go away for a little while longer. And I think that people are looking at AI like that. Oh, great, this is just another tool that goes into the box that I never use. change the thinking about what you're looking to use AI for. You're not buying a tool, you're hiring someone. Now, it may not be a flesh and blood person, but you are going to invest training in that person. You are going to give them tasks and job roles that will multiply the ability of your other assets to get things done. If you look at it that way, if you look at it as you are hiring someone, then you'll appropriately invest in that person. You'll give them the capabilities that they need to accomplish the tasks and roles and responsibilities. And kind of like Seamus said, then that elevates the rest of the team, because now they're not spending hours of their day tracing down log messages or generating reports for the executives. I mean, with a properly configured AI, the executives can request the report whenever they like to see it, and they can verify that the information that's in the report is good information that they wanted. And those are the kinds of things that give you the capability to spend more time doing more impactful things, generating revenue, being more of an asset to the company and the bottom line, as opposed to just doing the regular maintenance task that nobody wants to do.
Absolutely, very well said. Thank you so much. And Daryl, over to you for final thoughts.
Great, thanks. Well, I can carry on from what Tom is saying there, really. I mean, I'm always telling the operations staff that progress is progress. Whether you're fixing a fault or deploying something, progress is progress. Sometimes it's small progress, sometimes it's big. AI is not going to fix everything all at once. And so I say, on Tom's note there about, think of it as hiring another person. It's hiring that pair of hands to just progress your fault along the right lines. You're not throwing it all against the wall and seeing what sticks. AI really focuses you, and it just progresses you forward in that incremental step that we talked about earlier. I don't mind if a fault takes a long time to fix, as long as there's progress in that way. So then I can report to management and say, it is taking a while, but we're seeing this progress. And I think that's definitely what AI is bringing us at the moment.
Absolutely fantastic. I think we brought in a lot of themes to the fore here. You don't need to know everything, all the plumbing, so to speak. It's how you can work with AI. It's changing this narrative, it's this complementary strengths aspect, and going from menial tasks to the meaningful, how we can get to that higher order work. So I think so many takeaways here, a lot of practical examples as well, how we're seeing organizations at different stages using this within IT and network. So fantastic. Thank you, all three of you. So Seamus, Tom, Daryl, thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you all for joining our webinar as well. It's been fantastic and a lovely discussion. I think one we can continue.
Great. Thank you very much.